Did you go anywhere else? You started off in...
After soldiers were in the European theater for 6 months, if they were still alive, they could go on R&R, which is rest and relaxation or whatever. Mm-hmm. Now most of them went to Rome or Paris, and some could go to London if they really wanted to. But we had an allied person in our office who was from Denmark, Copenhagen. And she was still in love with her home. And she says, you've got to go to Copenhagen because that's where the happiness is and the food. And see, we had not had good food. We had this canned beef, and they tried to make it edible, but it wasn't too good.
Yeah.
We never saw milk, we never saw any dairy products while I was in Frankfurt. But Denmark had lots of food and stuff like that. So eventually, Earl Quick, I went to high school in Stanton with him, and he was in Bremen, and he was a corporal, and so I got in touch with him and said, how'd you like to go to Copenhagen? He said, I'd love to. So we wound up in, they call it Copenhagen. Right. We wound up there. Now, Ingeborg Christensen was the allied person that we worked with. And she lined us up with a couple of girls who were college students. Okay. So we met them in a square in the evening, and the Meta was the one that I was with, Meta Horlick. And Earl's girl was Gudon something or other, I don't remember. And they showed us, they went to college in the daytime, and in the evening we went to shows, we went dinner.
How long was your leave?
Week.
Oh.
We went out to Elsinore, where Hamlet allegedly had lived. And we went up to what was known as the Danish Riviera, which was on it was kind of a strait between Denmark and Sweden.
Oh, okay. Right.
And went for carriage rides. We just had a real good time.
Yeah. And what did you eat?
We wound up eating it was all Danish food, and it was mostly open-faced sandwiches, which is what they eat a lot of.
Yeah. But real beef and stuff?
Oh yeah, but not beef. I wanted a steak.
Okay.
Because I had heard about steaks, how good they were. Down on the farm, we never had steak. Steak was always too expensive. It was sold. When they butcher, they sell the steaks. Yeah. And what they did was they had veal. The Danes loved their veal. And I noticed when we were there again, on the cruise ship, veal was what you wanted. You never saw steak because steak is old and tough to them, and it wasn't much. So we ate a lot of veal. Yeah. We ate a lot of these open-faced sandwiches. I forgot what we went to smorgasbords every noon, because smorgasbord is the Danish food that they eat. Right. But we had lots of milk, and I got sick because I just gulped it down. Oh. And I had too much because it was real food. Yeah. And the Danes were occupied, of course, like all of Europe was occupied by Hitler. But the Danes were pretty smart people, and the German occupiers would call them stupid and dumb and things like that, which they understood. So they decided they'd be dumb. So things would break down and factories would break down and things like that. So then the Germans, particularly the SS, got a little bit boisterous or whatever, and they asked the British. The Danes were always very close to the British because they were both crown places. And so the British sent in 2 mosquito bombers who came in under the radar into Denmark, across Denmark, into Copenhagen, and pinpointed the SS headquarters. And they blew it up. So even today, 50 years later, we went and saw, they never repaired it, they just left it as a pile of rubble. That was their war memorial. And then it was right near the Little Mermaid. I'm sure you've heard of the Little Mermaid.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Down by the harbor.
There,
By the harbor?
in the harbor, right in the harbor.
Yeah.
Right, you know, water lapping up to it.
Yeah.
But that was their war memorial. And we went to see that, and one of the nicest things that happened to me the whole time I was in Europe, Earl and I were riding a streetcar, going somewhere, I don't really recall, maybe going out, because we'd meet the girls a certain place every night, out at their house.
Right.
And an elderly man, probably in his 50s, got up from where he was sitting and went like that. He insisted I sit down. So I sat down, and on the uniform you have a U.S. here,
Mm-hmm.
and whatever your unit assignment was, and I had crossed rifles because I was still assigned to the infantry.
Mm-hmm.
And he touched that, and he touched that, and he said, "Tusentak." I've never forgotten that. That means 1,000 thanks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that kind of choked me up when Betta told me what Tusentak meant.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah, that's good. Well, what else here in Europe? Did you anywhere else? Mostly Frankfurt.
We weren't allowed to
Copenhagen?
roam around too much
Yeah.
because Germany was divided up into 4 sectors.
Sure.
And we were in the American sector, so we couldn't go outside of the American sector.
Sure.
The British sector was just north of us.
Right.
And the French sector was right along France.
Yeah.
Germany.
Right.
And then the Russian sector was, unluckily, Berlin area,
Yeah.
which became East Germany later on.
Right.
But Droney and I decided we'd go down on one time, we had some time off, we decided we'd go down to a unit where one of his buddies from Boston was stationed. And we got down there and it was getting dark and we ran into a roadblock, and it was occupied by Russian troops. Mm-hmm. And we were frightened. Mm-hmm. We didn't know whether they'd take us in and accuse us of going across or whatever. So we turned right around and got out of there. It was near Nuremberg.
Oh, okay.
And Nuremberg, of course, was bombed pretty badly.
Yeah, right.
Because the British and the Americans, the towns where things had happened that were great for Hitler were the ones that really got plastered. Yeah. Now Frankfurt was just a rail center.
Right.
So Frankfurt really didn't have much problem until one night, according to what I was told, the bombers, these massive 1,000 bombers, would have a primary and secondary target. And if they couldn't get into the primary target, either for weather or for flak or for whatever, they'd hit their secondary target. Well, Frankfurt got hit twice one night as a secondary target, so Frankfurt was a pretty level town when I was there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, okay.
That's it.
I got 4 minutes left. Tell me about your when you first went in, and it was actually mentioned in the Citizen Soldiers book, the special company for you sharp kids.
AST program, Army Specialized Training Program. I enlisted on my birthday, on my 17th birthday, and was assigned a week later to Penn State. And I went to Penn State. We studied engineering. We were in accelerated programs. Everything was, we had to be behind our desks studying every night until 10 o'clock. And I found out later that the AST program was a part of the Manhattan Project. And after 3 terms, I got the mumps at Penn State. So they put me in the college infirmary and soon decided that I was too far behind. I could not catch up my group. So they transferred me to Virginia Tech, which more recently became famous for shooting people. And I went down there and started that cycle all over, and this time it was civil engineering. So I...
Is that still AST?
Still AST.
Okay.
And then when I finished that cycle, I passed everything. Now John DeWolf wanted out, so he flunked out. But I did not flunk out.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you flunk out, you go to the troops, is what they said.
Yeah.
And I just, the way I passed differential equations, I took a quarter. And these were all tests that were put together by some supreme somebody. And I'd flip the quarter, and heads was A or B, and tails were C or D, because they were all, then I'd flip it again, and heads was A, and tails was B, heads was A, and tails was B. And it was a very hard exam, and they graded it on the curve, and I made out pretty well. I passed the course by flipping a quarter. And when I was taking mechanics, I didn't understand any of mechanics. And so we had a teacher who liked a couple of guys who were very brilliant. Some of these guys, I was one of the dumbest ones in the thing.
I don't believe it.
And so he would work problems with them, and the rest of us would sit there and read newspapers or do this or that or the other. And then when we had exams, the guys, the teacher would just go off and read, and the guys would pass, finish up the exam and then just pass their exams around. We'd copy it, and I passed. That's how I passed. But I really didn't know anything about engineering, and I knew I didn't like it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Well, I think our tape is about up. There it is. It says 0. So thank you.
But it wasn't until later that I found out that it was a part. And the reason I found out was when I was at Penn State. You don't need to tape this. When I was at Penn State,
I'll let it run out.
There was a guy who was in the 7th term, and he had taught math at Harvard. Yeah. And man, he was smart. Named Bob Beezer. And for some reason or other, we became friends. So he helped me a good bit.
Yeah.
And when he finished EE7, he was sent to a little place down in Tennessee called Oak Ridge.
Where they were...
Nobody had ever heard of it before.
Yeah. That was heavy water? What were they doing down there? Something with the...
Heavy water, H2O2 or H something.
Yeah, they were doing that.
But anyway, when I was in infantry basic down in Texas, we continued to write.
Yeah.
He wrote to me in early July saying, "You're not going to have to go to Japan."